Media and the press is the enemy of the people. What do you have to say? What do you think about press freedom here in South Africa and around the world? Do you value press freedom? What does it mean for you? Because a lot of people are saying that, especially journalists are saying that press freedom is an extension of citizen freedom. It allows me as a journalist and Sarah Kimani, who's on your screen there, to give you information, good or bad, and for you to make up your own mind. So let us know your thoughts. Do you value press freedom? At the agenda_SABC is our handle. It's World Press Freedom Day today, but in the East African region, journalists have a mixed bags of fortunes. While the media spaces has expanded, journalists, still face oppression, threats, and work under a climate of fear. Sarah Kimani helps us understand the region's media scene, and she joins us now live from Nairobi, Kenya. Sarah, thank you very much indeed for your time. So we're hearing reports in Uganda. Let's start there first of all, where the Ugandan Communications Commission this week ordered 13 radio and TV stations to suspend their news editors, producers and heads of programming. Then we hear in Tanzania, a local journalist has been missing for more than 500 days under unclear circumstances. While in Kenya, journalists have received threats from politicians and businessmen over their work. Is there anything to celebrate, Sarah, in the East African region as far as media freedom is concerned?
Indeed, there is a lot to celebrate with the digital technologies now. In the East African region, we have more television stations. We have citizen journalists also doing a lot of work informing the public and breaking news sometimes in circumstances where mainstream media may not be able to get there. So the space has widened. We have more newspapers reporting from various scenes. We have a lot of media houses here in Kenya being able to cover stories from across the region. So there is indeed a lot of expansion in terms of what we are able to do as journalists. But there's also a lot of fear among journalists, because in most cases they have been suppressed from doing their work freely. Media houses have been shut, and we've seen governments always pushing to have only their side of the story told. Take, for example, what is happening in Uganda right now, where 65 journalists face the sack because the government says they reported information that was not true. But this is only because they were reporting about Robert Chagulanyi's arrest, one of the main opposition candidates there in Uganda.
Bobby Wine is as he's popularly known. But, as you correctly pointed out, Sarah, it's not all doom and gloom, though. This is the first time, I understand, that Ethiopia is celebrating World Press Freedom Day without a journalist being behind bars.
Indeed, and probably befitting that Ethiopia is hosting World Freedom Day celebrations today. Once Prime Minister Abiy Mohammed came into power, one of the things he did is to have several of those journalists who had been locked up released. But there's still a lot of publications that are closed. A lot of journalists in the Oromia region still cannot be able to work freely. And so they receive threats. It may not be from government officials. They will receive threats from local administration, from mobs while covering demonstrations. And these are issues that we will find in any of these countries in the East African region. And journalists are still being killed. If you go to South Sudan, if you go to Burundi, if you go to Tanzania, if a journalist is not killed, they will be disappeared. And these are issues that are still of concern to a lot of journalists working in this region.
In terms of Nairobi, how is this day being commemorated there?
Well, commemorations will be held in a town just about 100 kilometers out of Nairobi called Naivasha, where we expect the government's Media Council of Kenya to lead discussions around media freedom, around what they have been able to do to include more women in leadership positions in the media, and what more they can do to self-regulate themselves so that the government then does not have to come up with laws that continue to clamp on free media, to clamp on the freedom of the press, and to even just regulate what they can report and what they cannot report.
Sarah, you no doubt traveled the length and breadth of the African continent. When you go to various countries, what sort of reception are you getting? What's your impression with regards to the understanding and the value placed on journalism?
in most parts of Africa, journalists are treated with suspicion. That's the first thing. Anytime you go to any African country looking for accreditation, there's suspicion, one, and then the governments will try to push you back. There are countries where you cannot even go live from the streets because they say if you're here to just cover a conference, you must stay within the precincts of the conference. You cannot go outside. So there's always suspicion that the media may be out to see more than they're supposed to do. Accreditation is still a problem. Sometimes what they will do is that they will make the accreditation fee very high, so it becomes impossible for you to get into those countries. Alternatively, there are visas, special visas for journalists. So if you're applying for a visa, until recently it was very difficult for a journalist to go into Sudan because if you go in as a journalist, then you will not be allowed to report, or you will not even be allowed to go in the first place. Several times we've been denied visas to go into Sudan. In countries like Ethiopia, they will keep your equipment in the airport probably until the last day when you're leaving, so making your work very difficult or no work at all.
Sarah Kimani, live for us in Nairobi. Have yourself a great Press Freedom Day. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting.